Good afternoon and a warm welcome to everyone tuning in for today's LinkedIn Live event brought to you by Pronix Incorporated. I'm Srinivas Gupta, Director of Digital Solutions and Client Success, your host for the evening, and I'm really excited in exploring into the dynamic world of data engineering today. We will delve into the topic transforming data engineering, the role of QA automation and DevOps. In an era where data is the core of innovation, understanding the integration and quality assurance and automation and DevOps practices is more crucial than ever. We will chat about how QA automation keeps our data clean and our pipelines slick, and why DevOps is a superhero team up we all need. Ready to get some cool insights, making corrections, and talk shop with the pros? Let's jump right in and meet the brainiacs who are going to enlighten us today. Joining us today are the distinguished experts in the field of data engineering at IT innovations. I would like to start with Kishore, Pronix's visionary in IT and digital transformation, champions application modernization, and mentors future tech leaders. I respectfully request Kishore to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed panel speakers and request him to share his insights on the topic at hand, setting an enriching tone for our discussion. Kishore.
Thank you, Shri. Thank you all, gentlemen, for joining this LinkedIn Live event on transforming data engineering. So with me, I have Kirk. Kirk is a Chief Digital Officer, Data Officer at Health First. Health First is a health insurance company based in New York. So he's a dynamic data leader. He drives the digital innovation through data engineering, and also brings the enterprise efficiency with his AI strategy. And also we have Greg. So Greg is also an esteemed QA manager, QA automation expert, and he has over more than a decade experience in the growth and influential leadership within quality assurance space. And we have one more guest, Sai Teja. So he's our DevOps automation expert, especially in AWS serverless solutions and CI/CD mastery. And he has advanced automation delivery and experience within the IT landscape. So with that, so myself, Kishore, I'm the VP of Digital Solution here at Pronix. So I'd like to bring this event to enlighten most of the data engineers in the different industry. So one of the major challenge the data experts are facing, we all heard about QA engineering, QA automation, DevOps automation within the application space, and also in the API and backend integrations. But there's a large amount of challenges and pain points the data engineering team is facing with respect to how do we get the quality engineering into the data pipelines, data integration, data processes, ELT, ETL processes, cloud data warehousing, data analytics space. So that is the focus of the event here. So so back to you, Shri, so we can get started with the event topics.
Sure. Thanks, Kishore. And yes, I would like to start with Craig. Hi, Craig. What's the buzz in data engineering these days? Any cool new trends we should be excited about, especially with QA automation and DevOps on the scene?
What I've seen, at least where I'm at now, and note that I'm with a medical device company. One of the neat trends that I've seen, obviously, everybody's going to the cloud. We're all using the cloud across the board with, whether it's AWS, Azure, or some other Google, Oracle cloud, whatever it may be. But everybody's using that along with Docker. And the neat thing that I'm finding with the improvements and things that you can do is the QA environments, especially with working with data integration and everything else, you can put your environments into Docker, and then you can literally use your entire software QA from a Docker container and run everything directly through there. You can automate your entire process and be able to have a very quick software QA environment that's all now essentially code-based, instead of worrying about what server, where you're putting it, and how you're doing it now. So there are a lot of new changes and new infrastructure and new methods by which you can do things. especially with DevOps, when it comes to Jenkins or Circle CI, if you're using something like that, which is cloud-based, DevOps software, with robotic process automation. If you're familiar with robotic process automation, I would assume. So, this is kind of what I'm seeing the landscape go towards, with everything, at least from a data perspective, at least from what I see. You have AI and you have machine learning. We're getting there, but it's not, I don't, it is prime time. It's starting to be, but it's at the, I'll call it the birth stage. Because we're just, you've got all this AI and there's all this opportunity. But I think that, as an industry, we need to figure out how to take that and run with it, where to go exactly with AI. Because it's not going to write query. It can help you write the queries. It can help you generate things, but to the point that it's actually taking a schema and being able to run off things, will be fascinating when they're actually able to work with that. There are some ways to dynamically do that. And there's been some strategies I've used in the past that could utilize that, but we're not quite there yet. So, but it's exciting.
Yeah, of course. Yes, correct. Sure. And correct. So, would you like to post some, trends influencing the strategies and priorities of organizations in data engineering?
Yeah, no, and definitely good. I'd definitely like to build on some of the stuff Greg said, because I think he was, definitely dead on where we're at from a maturity perspective, and why the cloud has been a big enabler in Docker containers and being able to automate this whole process. So, I think data is becoming a victim of its own success, same as analytics. So what we're starting to really see is now that everything uses data, data-driven enterprises, data-driven decisions, the business really is starting to, we're not like that backroom database team that I think a lot of us, like myself, started with years ago. We're more at the forefront of a lot of these business decisions and these business enablement activities. And so what we're starting to see is, because we're a victim of our own success, people are expecting more rigor around us like they do already with, software development, traditional DevOps, API development, and all of that. And I think that's where you kind of start to see terms like data ops pop up in the industry, where the struggle we run into is you don't have the same abilities. That you can't just take like DevOps, because data changes over time, it's mutable. So you can't just use all of the practices you get from microservices and DevOps against data. But I think we're starting to really see patterns out there that are exciting, and tooling that ties us or gets us closer to being able to simulate, a lot of what you're trying to accomplish with software DevOps in data now. So you start to see things like dbt show up, and really cool things you can do with embedding dbt. You start to think of, in the past with traditional ETL solutions, you'd rely on like Informatica or Talend to do pieces of your data pipeline or analytics pipeline, but they never did everything you needed. They wouldn't cover a lot of the test automation, the regression testing, smoke testing, maybe get a little performance testing if you use something like Dynatrace or something in the industry. But it was like you kind of cobbled it together. Whereas I think we're really starting to see patterns that performance in QA and smoke and regression testing can be automated, which then if you think of agile teams, which always worked really well with software development, now, and we're doing it at Health First, all of my teams, my analytic and data engineering teams, they're agile based. We don't use Kanban and all of this stuff anymore. We can do pure sprint based type of work. And what's allowed us to do that is putting these foundational elements in place. And there's still not, and I'm sure we'll talk more about it today. There's not like a single solution that gets you there. There's not a, panacea. You've still got to assemble pieces together. What are you going to use for orchestration, Airflow, or something like that? What are you going to use for your data ops, DBT or something like that? There's, 5 or 6 tools that you still need to assemble along that process. And then probably 1 or 2 more at the end for observability to look for data drift and other issues in the future. But at least those patterns are really starting to show up in the industry now, which is exciting because you don't have to go, assemble it from scratch. You can take what you've got and figure out how to maybe put it together, which is what we're doing, in a way that we can really accelerate our ability to deliver data. And I think the final piece, and then I'll be quiet, is I think what we're starting to see as well around data and analytics teams is they keep growing like traditional IT did before it had to automate and shrink back down. And you're starting to see some friction from a cost center budget perspective because it's data and analytics. You can show value, sometimes better in other areas, but there's still a struggle to, if you're continuing to grow from a cost center perspective, for number of staff you need, especially, and you go from like a 50 person to an 80 person to a 100 person team, and each year, like my team right now is 184 people, but we're shrinking it back. It got too big, and you get to a stage where that automation gives you the ability to right size your organization without the risk of, kind of cutting folks in areas that are critical. So you almost need to invest early to build out that automation, which is what we've been doing. And then it allows you to kind of right size the organization.
Okay. So with all the technical leaps we are seeing these days, the tech leaps, so where's this data engineering headed to? What about predictions can you see so far?
So I definitely think it's heading to, I think the cloud takes it to a really interesting place because you've now converged on kind of your technology and your data ecosystem. So, so say we're an AWS shop. So we've now, and we use native AWS. We don't use Snowflake or anything, though I've done Snowflake in the past. But you start to build what they're calling like a lakehouse architecture now, where I think the technologies allow you to almost centralize your data, but make it available in different ways that people need. And as you do that, all of a sudden, those patterns for building out your data pipelines get a lot simpler. For us, we only have a handful of patterns, whereas I look back when I was at companies like GlaxoSmithKline and LabCorp, and we were on premise, I had so many like customized patterns. I'm running over here against Teradata. I'm running here against Oracle. I'm running here against other things. As you start to centralize, and I'm not proposing like a data warehouse of the past, it's not like this behemoth that takes forever to actually do any changes to. I think that's where you kind of get into more of these, lake house flexible architectures where your storage solution underneath the covers like S3, you can put different ways to get at the data, but you don't have to have 1,000 copies of the data anymore. The cloud solutions are so flexible and integrated that now, your team can, like when I mentioned right sizing, I think a big part of this is, you don't have to have teams that are trained on everything. And I'll probably talk later about cloud to see was I'd have to have a team that was experts in every product that I had, Airflow, Kubernetes, Docker. But then you get in the cloud, and I'll mention a bit more about it later. But now all of a sudden you get these managed solutions like managed Airflow, managed Kubernetes, and you still have to have some experience, but you don't have to be an expert anymore. You don't have to do all the monitoring, the configuration, the upgrades. You pay a little extra money and you start to look at your cost profile, and you shift a bit more of it to these services that can automate your world for you and do like these, the managed service piece. And you don't need, to keep adding, we just added Airflow last year. Do I need 5 or 6 new Airflow engineers? Not really. I've got a managed airflow version on AWS that I can then have my team get competent enough to orchestrate and work in it, but they don't have to figure out all the intricacies of installing it and monitoring it and upgrading it and stuff like that.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Thanks for shedding light on what's new and what's next. Sure. Craig, I would like to hear from you about your predictions into data engineering, evolving roles of QA automation and DevOps. What would you like to comment?
What would I like to see?
Yeah.
I would like to see solutions that can help organizations grow with making sure that their data sets are clean. I've made it position to make sure that I can build tools myself. And as I said, I'm more of a custom solution kind of person. I've always built my own tools using, very low end coding oftentimes, depending on the language. You get into different structures, but you want to make sure that you can match up this value over here with a value over here, database versus database, or a file to database. And, Kirk can probably recognize from, when you're dealing with files, whether it be from a state or government agency, that you get them, things like that. You have to be able to match up the data and make sure that what you have in one place is accurate in the file as well as the database. Otherwise, you're in HIPAA violation. And that is going to be a major issue that I think a lot of companies, at least on the healthcare side, are going to be facing, is making sure that their data is clean and that they're not cross-contaminating, because you could have New Jersey, that you're dealing with over here, and Pennsylvania over here, and somehow your data gets combined, and then you've got a real problem. And the only way to do that is to make sure that you have, what the data in your golden copy is. You want to make sure that you match that up with whatever's in your database. And I think tools for future that we need to look at, whether it be AI related, machine learning related, or even ones that I've created, need to be able to handle the kind of workload that, with millions of claims and millions of, providers, et cetera, to deal with and handle that in an efficient manner. And I think where we're going, I think, machine learning and AI are great, but I think we need to have some dynamic method by which we can do that. As I said, I've created some of these tools myself. There are industry related tools. I wasn't, when I was working at AmeriHealth many years ago, I found that, a lot of the industry related tools, I kind of put them to the side and built my own, because admittedly, they don't all, there's no perfect, one-shot solution across the board. You can query a lot of things, you can match a lot of things up, you can look for patterns, but unless you have a way to actually, say what's here is actually here, and confirm it with some check off, you don't have true data quality. And that's just the bottom line. So I think tools that can handle this at a low level, a low level of engineering, so that they're fast and can handle a lot of data stream, is what we're going to be looking for going forward.
Sure, right. Sure. Sai, I would like to start with you today. So,
Sure.
what about the integration challenges and solutions you see in the existing data engineering workflows?
Sure, Sri.
QA automation and DevOps.
Yeah, sure. So just like Greg said earlier, we cannot have a single solution for all the problems that we have, or all solutions cannot lead to a single tool. So we have to have our custom solutions. We are a cloud first company, and we have all serverless solutions for data engineering and other projects. So our solutions are mainly focused on delivering self-service data engineering tools, right? If you have a data flow that needs to be run, it has to be self-serviced instead of somebody in the back end trying to export huge sums of data and sitting there watching it, right? So it requires a lot of automation, a lot of QA has to be done to make sure the flow is running as expected and the data has quality as expected. right? So regarding the challenges, this is the main challenge, right? Not every team wants the same kind of flow, or neither they want same kind of data. The data that is being generated by one flow will be in terms of petabytes. The other flow would be in terms of just 2 MB, 3 MB, right? So if you are talking about integrating AI and machine learning models into this QA automation and in the data engineering world, your flow should be very flexible enough to generate only limited amount of data that is required only for that particular task. Let's say you have 1,000 customers data that you're gonna pull, right? Uh, on demand, you should be able to pull only a single customer data on your pipeline that should be appended over time. I mean, I'm going through very specific use cases here that's different for different companies. But all I'm trying to say is when AI and machine learning models were involved in the entire data engineering pipeline process and QA automation process, we need to have it as slick as possible, right? These are very ground level integration issues that we are seeing from a long time, and I don't think so these issues will go away in near future. But yeah, we'll try our best to resolve the gap, bridge the gap.
Yes, that's an interesting take. Thanks, Greg and Sai. So, what type of potential solutions or strategies do you see, Sai, for these integration challenges?
Yeah, I would say one thing is going with serverless flow, like Airflow. One of our guests mentioned here, right? Airflow is one powerful serverless tool and very very much scalable. It could process one customer data as well as 1,000 customers data or millions of customers data, but the flow won't break. So the reliability of these cloud infrastructure is getting stronger and stronger day by day. And there are a lot of cloud providers, just like one of the one of the watcher asked, like, is there a tool for GCP and ETL integrations? There were many, and there will be more coming in the future. And there will be more tools that will be built by AI alone. You will see in future, but we don't have a tool that is directly generated by AI at this point. But we can expect it in future. That's my take on it.
Right, thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, Greg, regarding the impact of cloud technologies on data engineering, what type of role do you see on the cloud technologies in transforming the data?
Well,
Yes.
I think the cloud to me is it's a server. You Amazon has tons of tools. Google has their GCP. You have plenty of tools out there. I see Gather as a great tool, but there's, and Airflow was mentioned, but you've got many tools. The cloud is more of a place to combine everything and put it all together and get your solution. But you need the cloud integrated with other, other pieces. It can't just be it's on the cloud. You can store data on the cloud, you can store your applications on the cloud, but in the end, you still need to be able to get the data out and make sure it's clean. That's when it comes to software QA, the bottom line is in the end, you have to have some process by which you can sign off and say, hey, I've evaluated this data and I've made sure that this data is accurate. I can see, the patterns. I can make sure that my customers are getting what they need over here. I can see that, the financial transactions are taking place properly over here. You need a way by which you can do that. And the cloud enables it, but you need Docker, the cloud, aligned with the proper continuous integration, continuous development platform to make sure when your application is continuing to develop, you continue to develop with it and make sure that you can have the proper coverage of your data, even though it's probably a massive amount of data sitting either in the cloud or otherwise that you're going to have to be able to deal with. And there are many applications to solve that, but I like to, as I said, I'm a custom solution guy, but oftentimes I'll go in and use some Python with or C Python makes things easy as I see it. It's just, for me, it's easy to develop in, but a lot of the solutions that I've come up with are either in Python or Java, and they hit using different methods by which I can do querying and use dynamic querying to do so. So I have a list of IDs, for instance, within, I go back to the idea of claim IDs, but it could be any, customer IDs or whatever you have within your data where you need to set a specific query and then have a dynamically changing query within that so that you can just automatically feed through it and do that sort of thing. Some of the cloud tools do enable you to do this, but for me, it's a hodgepodge of different tools to make sure that they work properly.
Okay.
I'm not sure I answered that question entirely, but
no, but I think you did, because I
Let's
think you're right about the
yes.
hodgepodge. Yeah, and I think that's the struggle right now, is in the cloud, even, people start to think the cloud's the panacea to your, your problems we had on-prem with, having to have a mesh of tools to get something done. But it's not. I mean, there's not what I would say a data ops solution or DevOps for data solution in the cloud already. You can't just go buy a product like you can do with, say an ETL or these others, or maybe a piece of that assembly, but not the whole thing. So I think the art for folks like us, and what we bring to the table and where these discussions get interesting, is what patterns of people use. And there's multiple patterns, like, I do AWS, you could do, multiple solutions along the way for orchestration, for, for your GitHub, or for any, pieces along, you can use Jenkins, you can, throw a lot of different tools out there. And the hard part for us is how those tools connect at the edges. That's where most of our work is, because every white paper you see from a vendor has, hey, I'm Informatica, I solve all of your problems, just use me everywhere. And, and you start to see these, and that's not really the answer. For those of us who are experienced, and we know, like Greg had a lot of really good things around data quality. Those of us who are in, healthcare, life sciences, or any regulated industry, you've got to be really confident about your data. You have to make sure that what you start with is what you bring. If you change things, why did you change it? If you, so that whole data lineage, what happened if I'm out here presenting this back to a provider and I need to understand what kind of came from the member or from somebody else along the way, what transformations happened? Because if I need to explain it, I need to be better at being able to do it. So I think, to Greg's point, he's definitely right. There's not an easy answer. That's why these discussions are interesting. And I always love doing them and listening to everyone's opinion, because if you can get some pointers about how to progress with this yourself and how to get started, and maybe some of these patterns that work nicely together, it's worth its weight in gold when you start doing it yourself, instead of trying to just figure it out and hit the same issues that maybe others have hit. I'm one of those. I love to learn what others have done, because I'm still going to have to tailor it to my own individual, patterns or architecture that I've got. But if something gets me 50, 60, 70% of the way there, and I only have to tailor 30% instead of 100, that's awesome. And that's the piece I think we all need to, kind of keep pushing for, is what is that 50, 60, 70%? What's that jumpstart kit that gets here? What does it look like, and how do we, use that? And then, the magic or the art of it is how you tailor it to work with your individual architecture once you put it in place.
Got it. Okay, sure. So for the tech warriors out there, how should they gear up for these changes or prepare?
How should the what? I'm sorry. Give me.
Yeah, for the tech warriors out there. So
tech barriers.
How should they gear up for the changes?
Yeah, so from a tech barrier perspective, and I'll make sure, I want to make sure, correct me if I'm not answering the question correctly, but I think one of the biggest tech barriers you start to run into is that data lineage or observability between each step. Um, this is where I think traditional ETL, especially as you started to move data between a lot of systems, your base transactional systems into your data marts and your sandboxes, and you start to look at like data quality's got a lot of dimensions to it. I think there's a lot of it around, being consistent, correct, making sure your data transformations are right, but then how fresh is your data? So we saw a lot of this with sandboxes where people would build analytics pipelines and they just wouldn't refresh them. So, all of a sudden your signal detection for your providers or for your analytics is out of date. But I think being able to understand, and I think there's a visualization perspective that's going to happen over time, and maybe this is where AI and other tools start to help so you don't have to do it all yourself. But when you think of that data pipeline, in the past, you used to have these really complex user interfaces with all kinds of information that in the end really didn't answer the question of, did all the data that started at the beginning make its way correctly into the form that I'm using for my reporting, for my analytics, everything else. I think that's the eventual goal to get there. I still think, it might be a little bit easier on the cloud, a little bit easier as you consolidated your systems and you have less transformations going on, but it's definitely still not there. I mean, we still run into problems all the time where people question our data, or we find, data different in multiple places, like member information about their episodes of care, and some systems have certain episodes inside of it and certain interactions. Some places we're missing it, and then we start to find out someone grabbed data or didn't grab data from the correct place. So I think I know data governance is never a word that people love, but there's got to be a a bit of that inside of it to make sure what you're doing is correct and that you're using the data from the right places in the right way. In the past, we've used terms like business glossaries and stuff like that, or nowadays, kind of your modern data catalog. I think there's still a piece of that you've got to have so that you understand the metrics you're using, what got you there, and how the data was transformed to get you there. And then if someone wants to go leverage it, the context and the contract on how to use it. But I think, the danger we have right now with data engineering is we do a lot of data pipelines. And I think that discovery side for people to use the data, even really smart people like my data scientists, my analytic engineers, they still make bad assumptions based on what they look at the tables and the views that we've consolidated together, and they don't completely understand how to do some of the business things. Like for us, we have a concept called member months, which really defines when your different plans in healthcare are active for you, and those can be different, based on, like, some of our people are Medicaid, Medicare, and there's like really complex business rules around this. And so we have analytics folks who make the wrong assumptions all the time. How do we fix that in a way that makes it really easy, instead of right now they show up at my data, like my data product experts doors all the time asking for assistance? How, you got to get more closer to self-serve for at least 70 or 80% of those requests, so that you take out the risk and you make it easy for people to use the data.
Sure, got it. So I think we see some smart moves and strategies, definitely, yes. So, and in this context, Saiteja, so what's your take regarding the cloud technologies for QA and DevOps?
Yeah, just like Chris said, people got to know from where you can pick and place the data, right? And it's not a one-step process, never. It's never a one-step process. It originates from different places and it combines into different tables and then transforms, business logic, and then comes to data scientist or analytics engineering, right? So there are a lot of things that have to go right to get the right data and quality data. So, and it touches a lot of hands, a lot of brains, and everybody has a slight confusion or a slight distraction on what the business is, right? It's not like 100% clear to everybody what the actual business logic is. Just like Kirk mentioned, the member months, right? There could be many different business logics around it. In every sector, there is one. So the good thing about it is as long as you have analytics folks that could point out the right direction to the data engineering, it will all go well. But the ability of QA engineering and the automation of QA engineering is much needed to
Sorry, you're there?
Looks like
Sorry?
he got his screen.
He's frozen.
Should be coming back in. So in the meantime, Greg, I would like to post this out since people has been speaking about data clean and all. So how do you
Yep.
see QA automation role over here in data cleanup?
In data cleanup?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a role for both
The best
software QA
practices
and
that
development.
go ahead into the data engineering.
In terms of data engineering and cleanup, I mean, the goal of software QA in general is to make sure that, you know, whatever you're delivering in the end is based on the requirements and it's accurate, correct? So when it comes down to it, the data has to be accurate. If your requirement states that you have to have, you know, some truck getting from point A, you know, some city to another city in your database, it should show that that truck went from that city to the other city and not some third-party city. You know, it's the bottom line is you have to have a way of matching up your data in the end. That and the goal of QA is to point it out and to go through whatever's necessary, logging, you know, reporting, and bringing that to the attention of the appropriate folks. But you know, the fix for that is always going to end up, unfortunately, being handed back to development, you know, when software QA is completed. I think it's more software QA job to be proactive up front, to put things in place that will evaluate things appropriately so that when you go to production and you're ready to put this data out for the world, you know, it's accurate. That's the ultimate goal, is to make sure that, you know, your requirements that you had for your software and your software is built off those requirements. And in the end, software QA verified it and the data aligns with that. And that's the ultimate goal. So the bottom line, I mean, I can, you know, is there a specific way to do it? There's never a specific way to manage this, but I do find that certain things, like we've mentioned, the cloud and Docker, you know, with environments, I find the old method by which using QA environments where you'd set up and configure servers to do that and have your software QA environment and these other environments is kind of going the way of the dodo, as I see it. And you're more working, you know, directly with what you're working now, because everybody can just, you know, Docker is beautiful in the sense that it's almost like a virtual machine. You just clear it away and then you bring back the version that you need to test with or to work with, and you can always be working with the latest and greatest. And from a software QA standpoint, there's nothing better than making sure that you're, you know, your code, that you're, you know, moving along in the right track and being able to test at the right point. And I think the solution, at least where I'm at now and what we're using, is, you know, Docker based with Circle CI and a CI/CD pipeline through Circle CI with robotic process automation to be able to continuously go through our whole list of software and doing QA directly from emulator that's built off of Docker containers. So that's my take on the whole thing.
Sure. So Craig, do you see any kind of impact on the efficiency and accuracy of the data if QA
I mean,
is done?
I think they're definitely, to kind of Greg's point, I like the idea, and we're doing a bit of the same with kind of that wipe and reload concept for kind of different QA environments and that now. It does get rid of that freshness or that even cleanness perspective, because how many of us have gone through QA before, had something that broke, and oh wait, it broke because someone didn't clean up QA when they were done. And it really, traditional QA has always struggled with doing like DML. Like you can do reads and queries all day, but the minute you start changing data, someone has to make sure they put it back, freshen it up if you need it, etc. And I really like the concept, and we're still early stages in it. I did a lot more of it at Deloitte Digital when I was there, my last job, but we're still at the early stages of, I'd say, being able to consistently wipe and build a QA environment inside of our automated pipeline. We did it at Deloitte Digital, and I loved it because we had it the minute you would check something in, it would then wipe, build Docker containers, exactly the same, wipe, build, run this all through. And I think that's the future. I mean, I was smiling when Greg was talking because it is an area that I think will transform data engineering in a good way. Like it'll be a lot more consistent. And the other interesting thing I love about that is a lot of times in the past, you'd have people doing QA. Like one of the first things I did at my last couple jobs was redefine the QA team, because a lot of times you'd miss something in QA. Oh, that didn't get caught. And then you'd have to tell the business, oh, we're going to add it to our checklist. And sometimes it was human error, like someone just missed a step or something was confusing in the results. Once you automate that and put that inside of this pipeline and you rebuild from scratch every time, you won't miss it again. So I'm one of those as a leader. I don't mind telling the business, like, we work fast, it's agile. Sometimes you miss things. If you can feel comfortable as a leader and say, look, we missed it, sorry, we'll make sure we do better job specking out our requirements and, our kind of false positives, negatives next time. But guaranteed we're going to put that check in and it will capture it next time. People feel more comfortable knowing that you get a little bit of those. You can't test for everything, but you won't get the same error twice. And being someone who's come from teams where I've embarrassingly had to admit to the business, yep, that's the same error as last time. My person said they fixed it and they didn't run it this time. They didn't put it in the checklist. Now we can verify that it's gone back into that testing harness that we've put there, and that it's going to put us in a much better place. So if you think of data quality and and also speed to market for being able to put this stuff in, I feel that as we mature this, and we're still early stages, but as we mature this, in a few years down the line, we're going to be in a much better place than we are now from a data engineering perspective.
Perfect. Right. Got it. Right. So, Sai, as a DevOps expert, so
Yeah.
we follow the same context. What do you say?
Oh yeah, I would give you guys a wonderful example that I came across during my initial times as a software engineer, right? So we have 15 different environments, and when the time comes to test the code that we have written, we have to test it on few different environments in order to pass it to the QA, from development to QA, right? So it is really hard to set up the data that matches, that really passes all your use cases, and then do the testing and hand it over to QA. Then QA has to do the same stuff all over again. The hunt for data is never going to stop, and it's really hard. The valuable man hours were being wasted, and I have seen this process with my own two eyes and experienced it for a couple of years. So whatever Greg and Kirk mentioned, using Docker images, that's the wonderful thing that could ever happen to a data engineer or a QA automation engineer or even the DevOps engineer, right? Now QA engineer is relieved from the task of pulling data or pointing out to the right database or right environment. All he needs to do is pull the right version of the Docker that developer asks you to test on, right? So that makes the lives of all these people really easy. And actually, it gives the QA automation engineer the ability to actually focus on quality of the data and correctness of data instead of worrying about the environment and what version of what is the database connection that I have to use for this version, right? That one of the biggest challenges for many QA automation engineers, and even for DevOps guys, it's really hard to set up environments one by one. There could be many things that go wrong when a simple variable that got misplaced by one of the QA engineers. So with Docker and containerization, all these things will go away. So
Okay.
that's my take on it. Like, the world is going to a beautiful place with the Docker.
Okay. So what type of principles can be applied to enhance this data pipeline designing or deployment or maintenance? What do you see like?
I mean, the maintenance is an ongoing process, right? Today you want something, tomorrow somebody says they want something else, and the necessary adjustments needs to happen from every place, from the origin to the ETL pipeline and to the CI/CD pipeline that needs to deploy at various places, various regions, right? So, uh, so far, the teams are going with the, like Greg mentioned, Circle CI, Dockerization, and Jenkins, a lot of other tools. In the serverless world, people are going with Terraform. That's a major player, right? To create infrastructure needed for each environment. You create a template that runs on development environment. You hand over the same template to run on the QA. Boom, all your infrastructure is there, including Docker containers, EC2 instances, everything is there. So these are the standard procedures everybody is following nowadays. And I don't think so for so many years in the future there's gonna be a big change as I see now, right? Regarding this infrastructure creation for data engineering, right? At least for this space.
Sure. So in the past experiences, what you have seen about, so any example can you share with us regarding the DevOps improving a data engineering process?
Oh yeah, I can tell you with my own experiences, right? 2 years ago, we don't have a CI/CD pipeline for data engineering teams, and they are using their own ways of uh, deploying the changes on infrastructure or on the core level, right? It consumes a lot of time. Let's say you have 10 data engineers trying to do the DevOps job of creating infrastructure and copying code. First of all, they are not DevOps engineers; they are data engineers. So we cannot literally ask them to deal with all environment related issues, and that will that will waste their time, their precious time. Instead, they could concentrate on developing some new new algorithms for data engineering and business logic, right? So our teams faced a lot of issues, and then we have developed a standard templating procedure that could be applied to every other project that we had with minimal changes. Once people started to follow that, all the changes that they have done could be deployed under 2 minutes on any given environment, all with a single button click, right? From the moment they commit code on a branch, it will be deployed into AWS serverless resources within 2 minutes. So that's the greatest change we have seen.
16 hours?
No, 2 minutes, under 2 minutes on all the
Okay.
environments. So
Understood.
that's the greatest change I have seen, and it helped our engineers a lot. Now they are doing like hundreds of deployments in the span of 1 week. So I'm happy they are happy.
That's good. That's good. Good. So as a data officer and a CTO, Craig, so what do you see on the latest technology, machine learning and AI in data engineering? What type of intersection
Yeah, I see it
can
in
you see
two
with QA and
places.
DevOps?
Yeah, I see it in two places. One is as you talk about data engineering, and I kind of look at it, analytics engineering is just an extension of that. Data engineering, at least I felt, had some rigor to it in the past. We used basic tools, stuff like that. Whereas now, I think analytics kind of similar to my conversation at the beginning around, you're kind of a victim of your own success. You're getting asked those same questions about rigor, data quality, all the other stuff that Greg had mentioned along the way. And I think as you do that, there's an intersection from a development engineering perspective now that all of a sudden it's not just your databases and your data marts, all of the stuff that you're using analytics, AI, ML for has to have similar rigor, transparency, data lineage to it, et cetera. I think the other piece, and this gets interesting with things like Gen AI to me in the large language models, is could you use that to co-pilot some of this work that we're doing right now? I think step one is it's not going to replace it. It's not going to do, your code generation and everything else, but could it do 50, 60, 70%? Could it be your co-pilot that does a lot of the basic stuff for you, creates your test suite, for a specific data engineering pipeline, then maybe you just tweak it around the edges to make sure it works, but give you a starting piece, give you a lot of those basics, and then it simplifies the job of the data engineer over time. Now, is it there yet? Nowhere even close. That's at least a year or two off. But I do think that everyone gets excited about these large language models for chat, bots and stuff like that. I get excited about, could it do a lot of the basic data stuff we're talking about? Like Greg talked a lot about data quality, which I'm near and dear to my heart. Could it do a lot of that? Could it find anomalies that your data steward or data product owner would have had to do in the past? So I do think it fits nicely into that future role, but that's still several years off, even from a co-pilot perspective, in my opinion.
Okay, sure. So now when we are seeing at using machine learning and AI into data engineering process, feeding the data to the model again, and what type of innovative ideas or innovative things can we see from the AI?
Do you want me to jump on that one as well? I'm glad to.
Yeah, my question was, like, if we are using machine learning and AI into the data engineering process, feeding the data to the same AI model again, and what type of innovative things or insights, accuracy,
I think
can we see?
And that's where I see some of this kind of next gen tooling like Gen AI coming in to help, because right now you have to have a human in the middle doing all of that data analysis. A lot of times it's your analytics engineer, data engineer, or your machine learning data scientist. And especially when you talk to your data scientists, they will complain, they always have to me, that the majority of their time is doing that data engineering, data quality, data cleanup. And if you're running the model, getting certain results, and you can get some of that like model refinement, data refinement being done by the tooling. And I think it fits a little more into ML ops and that side of things. But all of a sudden you can get that feedback natively ingrained into that machine learning building, training, or determining which model to use process. Then you can kind of go let it run and then come back, tweak it, see the results, let it run again. And, you can get closer to what I would call your citizen data scientist concept, where you don't need, these extremely classically trained data scientists to figure out all your problems. You can take your business analysts who really understand the domain and the data problems and the solutions, or what you're trying to solve, give them the right framework and tooling, and they're able to do a lot more than they were able to do in the past.
Okay, got it, Greg. So Greg, so speaking about when we are speaking about the data and processing, so what is crucial in today's data-driven world regarding real-time data processing and automation?
Well, I mean, stock quotes need to be accurate from, broker to transaction. I mean, it's simple. Real time data's flying across the screen. You got, financial transactions going across. You have the potential for major legal ramifications if things are not accurate from one side to the other. It's critical to make sure that, whatever applications you have working with real-time data, not only is the data that's going across accurate, but the back end is accurate. Because if the back end isn't accurate, it's pulling from the wrong data set. And where some of these things come in, and the uniqueness of the way I handle things is oftentimes I look for standards. And I look for maybe a standard file, for instance, that contains a unique set. And if I have something to evaluate your back end off of with data that is a quote a gold copy, oftentimes I can utilize that and find a way to robotically automate that and make sure that you have accuracy across the board, which in the end, your real-time transaction should be pretty accurate if your back end is accurate and your code is accurate. That's the way I look at it. There are plenty of tools out there to analyze it, cloud related, non-cloud related, but I think, it's critical that we make sure that real-time applications, are consistent.
Right, Greg. Thank you very much for the insights. And looks like we are clocking 4:07. So, all right, let's see if you've got any questions here. Answer out. Okay, sure. I think let's wrap up. Is that okay, Greg? You would add any last lines?
No, that's fine with me. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure.
Yeah, great. Thank you. Thank you very much, Greg. So thanks to our panelists for the wisdom and to our audience for tuning in. Remember, the data engineering world is always turning and we have got to spin along with it. Keeping up the conversation alive, keep innovating, and let's shape the future of data engineering together. Until next time, stay curious and stay connected. And for our viewers, a recording will be available for those who want to revisit the discussion. Stay tuned for more events like this, and don't forget to follow Pronix page and website for updates. Once again, thank you all for joining us. Have a good day. Thank you.